November 4th, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Mr. and Mrs. Russel Caston.
Was born in Allen County, which is close to Fort Wayne, and lived all his life
Fort Wayne.
around near the town of Ossian. If you'll, I'll answer the questions that are directed to me, honey.
Excuse me.
Who was your mother?
Her maiden name was Susan Francina Cartwright.
Cartwright. Was she from Indiana also?
Yes.
What kind of work your father do?
Well, he managed a farm and he also run a cooperage mill and sometimes a sawmill.
Mrs. Caston, where were you born?
What town you mean?
Yes, ma'am. Where and when?
Oh, Marshall, Oklahoma, 1896,
What month?
June. That's how I got my name.
Who was your father?
Jim Staton.
I'm sorry?
Jim Staton Staton. He was a pioneer in Oklahoma, from Kentucky.
Kentucky. Who was your mother?
Anna Nelson. She's from Indiana too.
Mr. Caston, how long did you live in Indiana?
17 years.
Get that plaque that sits right the outside of there. That's by Angie DeBow. He's just asked me about Angie DeBow. Right there on the floor.
How come you came to Oklahoma?
Well, I was acquainted here,
With me.
right with the acquaintance you just interviewed.
See that?
How
I
did you
met her
know?
in school.
In
College.
school?
We met in college. In Indiana.
What college?
Valparaiso, Indiana.
Valparaiso University.
What were you studying there?
Oh, anything and nothing. I was taking a school teacher's course.
Going to be a school teacher.
Well, that's what they thought. I wasn't.
Ma'am, what were you studying?
Art and music.
Sir, where'd you start school? Grade school?
In Indiana. Wells County, Indiana.
What was the name of the school?
Ossian, O-S-S-I-A-N, public school. Hello, honey.
Hello.
Hello,
I'm
Joe.
Sue.
How long did you live in Kentucky?
I didn't live there at all.
You didn't.
Not Kentucky.
I'm sorry, you're born in Marshall, Oklahoma. Your
Marshall,
father was born in
Oklahoma.
Kentucky.
That's right.
How come your father came to Oklahoma?
Well, he was born on a plantation in Kentucky, big plantation, and his father was a doctor, and he wanted him to be a doctor. He told him, I want you to go on. Well, he'd finished high school, and he said, now, where are you going to college? He said he wasn't going to college. He says, why aren't you? He said, I'm going to ride the range of Texas. So he said, well, we'll talk about it tomorrow. So tomorrow, he says, where are you going to college? He says, I told you yesterday I wasn't going to college. I'm going to ride the range in Texas. And so he said, well, I'm going to give you the money that will take you through college. And then when that's gone, don't come back to me for any more money because you won't get it. You've spent your college money. He went on to Texas and rode the range in Texas and took those herds of cattle from Abilene, Texas to Abilene, Kansas, where they put them on the train and took them to the Panama Canal where they were digging that.
Did your father tell any stories about the cattle drives?
I grew up on all those stories. Yes, he told stories. He was a great storyteller.
Tell me a few of them.
Oh, Lordy, I don't know whether I can or not. Anyway, I know the neighbors' kids used to come in and sit around and listen to him. They said they'd rather hear him tell the stories about bringing those herds of cattle from Texas to Kansas more than to go to any show. It was better than that. And then he played the piano too. And that was unusual in those days.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't play one.
What was your favorite story about the cattle drive?
Oh, I don't know that I had a favorite one. He told so many that it was hard to make up your mind which one you'd like the best. I guess where they had to park the cattle to near a stream so they'd have water all the way. And how long do you think it took them to bring a herd of cattle? Well, how many in a herd?
I don't know. How many?
Make a guess.
I'd say several hundred.
8,000
8,000.
in a herd. And they'd take them from Texas to Kansas, where they load them on the train, and shipped them back to Mexico.
Well, they shipped them to Chicago to the market.
Well, anyway, wherever it
They
was.
shipped the horses down to the Panama Canal and mules where they're digging the canal.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take to drive the cattle from Texas to Kansas?
Make a guess.
With 8,000 cattle, I'd say at least a couple of weeks.
6 months. They had to follow the streams. They had to fatten the cattle as they went along. And the grass was waist high all across Oklahoma then.
They was feeding the cattle. They wasn't driving them. They was feeding them.
Well, they were driving them too, Russell.
Oh, yeah.
How many drovers were with 8,000 head?
I haven't any idea. I don't know. Take a lot of them anyway.
Yeah. What position did your father normally take in the cattle drive?
Oh, he was what called him the captain of the group that took.
What does the captain do?
He sort of made the plans for the way to drive the cattle so that they'd be fed and watered all the way to Kansas.
What was the normal route?
What was the normal
The
route?
normal route. Which way did they normally go?
Well, they'd follow the streams from south to north.
Which
Where they-
streams did they follow, or did he say?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the names of all those.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the streams were that sort of flowed into each other, until they got to Kansas.
Now, where did they get the cattle for the cattle drive?
They run them. They were wild cattle. They had to run them down and catch them. And put them in. What?
Were they longhorns?
Longhorns, most of them, yes. And they were dangerous too. Boy, I tell you, they used those horns.
Mm-hmm. They drove from Abilene, Texas to Abilene, Kansas?
Kansas, yeah, both the same. They had to load them on the train,
Mm-hmm.
The only way they had to get them there.
Okay, and your father's name was Jim?
Jim Staton.
Staton, S-T-A-T-O-N.
They always said honest Jim Staton, because you couldn't get him to tell a lie or change anything for anything, or he wouldn't do it. They called him honest Jim Staton. We used to laugh about that.
Do you have any more stories about the cattle drive?
Oh, I hadn't thought about the cattle drive for a long time. No, I don't know as I do. That's been a long time ago, you know.
Mm-hmm. What was the name of the trail they took? Because we had the Chisolm Trail.
Chisolm. They took them up the Chisolm Trail.
Okay,
That's the
Chisolm
one.
What years did he ride the cattle trail?
Lord's before my time, and he came before the opening of Oklahoma. I don't know exactly the date, but quite a while.
Why did he settle in Oklahoma?
Why did he settle in Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he liked it, and when they were opening Oklahoma, '89, he and three other men went in a covered wagon from, let's see, I guess they went from the, what is the,
Buffalo Springs.
what? Buffalo Springs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Buffalo Springs what?
Oklahoma, just out in the open. It was in the general vicinity of what is now south of Enid, is where it'd be.
Yeah. Garfield County was north there, you know.
There wasn't any counties.
Yeah, there was Garfield County, and this
Garfield County was.
Logan County is where we lived.
They
and where he
all
took
were
his
made
claim.
up after the run.
Now, did he make the run of '89?
Yes.
Did he
And
talk
when
about
he
the run?
When he got to the place, well, he knew that area because he'd driven cattle across it several times, you know. And when he got to the place where he wanted the farm, why, he said, slow down. I'm going to get out here. This is the land I want right here. So they slowed down. They said, no, we're going down to the creek. You've got to have water. You go on to the creek. No, he said, this is the land I want right here. So they let him out, and he settled right there. And then after he'd been there quite a little while, why, one of the people who was on the next farm came down and talked to him and went back. And then here came a great big fellow on a horse, and he told Dad that he had gotten there first, and that Dad should let him have this. He said, Dad said, no, there was nobody here when I came. And this other fellow saw them arguing back down there. Oh, yes, they started digging a grave. And one would dig a while, and then the other one dig a while. They were going to shoot it out, see? So that's what they planned to do. Anyway, when they were arguing and still digging on the grave, and Dad was a crack shot too. He'd have got him, but then it didn't last that long. Anyway, this man came down there that had interviewed Dad before, and he said to this fellow, he says, this man was here first. And this fellow said, well, you've got a witness, so I guess I better go on. I'm not going to stay in a place where they permit that kind of people to settle. And he got on his horse and left. But that was quite a story.
Did your father talk about how the run began?
Oh, he probably did, but I don't remember what it was.
Did he? Where did he begin the run? The border?
In Texas.
I mean, no, the land run of '89. Because they had the land marked out, and everybody got to the border.
Oh, you mean during the rush?
Yeah,
the
during
run?
the run.
The run.
Yeah.
How do you think they found where their corners were?
I don't know.
A pile of rocks. A pile of rocks with a number on it.
Who piled the rocks up?
Well, I don't know. Whoever run the managed the run.
Okay.
Well,
had to locate some things, you know, and they did have the corner at each one of the corners was a pile of rocks with a number on it.
I guess the
You read,
Army.
you read Uncle Oliver's book, you'd find out.
Well, you can't.
Well, the Army was in charge of it, so I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
it was surveyed by the government then.
Oh,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
sure it
sure,
was.
sure.
Sure it was.
What kind of house did he build?
Log house. He went to the creek and cut down the trees, hewed off all the bark and everything, and built his house. And it took him 4 months to build one room.
Was he married at that time?
Yes, yes, he was. My mother was still in Kansas, Caldwell, Kansas, and she didn't come till July. See, that was in April. The run was in April.
Now, did the town of Marshall spring up around where your father settled?
Yes,
How far is the town from the homestead?
from our farm.
Yeah.
Well, it was about 4 miles.
Mhm.
Not very far.
Okay. Did your father talk about breaking the sod?
Breaking sod?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. They had to break sod, and the grass was waist high. It wasn't just little grass like we see now, but it was waist high, and those tall fellows had pretty high grass.
How did your father break sod?
He had a walking plow. They took this walking plow and several instruments for work, hammers and saws and things, when they went on the run. And the man who took the farm next to us was the one who had all the equipment that they took along. His
What
name was Billy Fox, and there's
Billy
Billy Fox.
Okay.
And that's by Angie DeBow now.
What is the difference between a regular walking plow and a sod plow?
A walking plow, a man had to go behind it and hold both sides of that plow to keep it in the ground. And what other kind?
A sod plow.
A sod? Well, I don't know. I never heard one called a sod plow, but then
Now I heard that's the
it would
kind
turn it over. A sod plow would turn that ground
Okay, I've
over.
heard that's the plow they used to first break sod.
Yeah, yeah.
But what was the difference between a regular walking plow and a sod plow?
I don't know that.
I can tell you,
I-
wasn't any difference at all.
There wasn't?
No.
Well, I never heard it anyway, if they had anything else.
Okay. When you were born in 96,
Yeah.
what kind of house did your parents have?
They had, well, there's a picture of it over there.
No, it's across to the other room is a picture of what there is left of it.
There was 2 rooms built that were not log houses. We had the log house was our kitchen, and the new house was our bedrooms. There was no such a thing as a living room because you ate and everything else in the log house. Well, that's a house that was built on the farm after, quite a while after the run.
Mm-hmm. As a little girl on the farm, what chores did you do?
Oh my, we had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Dad to say, put your feet on the floor. And that meant everybody get up, 4 o'clock. And we milked 20 cows when they had 20 cows. That was later, of course. And we had to milk those cows and I had to take them to pasture. And I took a horse and took 20 cows to pasture, 1.5 miles away, and then came back, got my breakfast, and walked to school 1.5 miles. We all had to do it. Everybody was busy. You didn't have any kids running up and down.
What was the name of the school?
School, Logan County. And wait a minute, that's what they named it after that. What was the name of it? Rosenberg. Rosenberg School.
Who was your teacher?
Oh my, let's see. We had several, of course. Well, we had one named Ella. Gosh, I can't remember what her other name was. Ella Smith.
Ella Smith.
Yeah.
How far from the house was your well?
On the porch right next to the window. They dug the well, and it had such a fine lot of water that people came by there. Everybody went by, stopped and got water out
Was
of
it
that
dug
well.
well?
It was dug well, yes.
How deep?
Rocks. It was finished up with rocks.
How deep was the well?
I think I heard him say 32 feet. Now, I don't know if that's right or not, but it'd be near that, I think. It was shallow. It wasn't very far down to the water, but it was ice cold, and people stopped there to get water as they went on this trail. See, the Chisolm Trail went past our house.
Her father was what you call a water witch.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you watch him witch the well?
Sure. Not this well,
Not
because
that
it's
well.
done before I got here.
Okay.
But then he'd go all over the around there, every place, witching their wells, and he always got water. I don't know how he knew it.
What kind of stick would he use?
The three-cornered stick. It was a branch with two prongs, and he
What
took
kind of
hold
wood was it?
locust.
Locust?
That's on the far. There wasn't any trees there till they planted them, you know.
What kind of trees did he build the log house out of?
Well, cottonwood, I think.
Cottonwood.
They were down on the creek.
Okay.
The cottonwood was the main one on Skeleton Creek, and that's where he got his lumber, his logs.
What kind of crops did your father plant on the farm?
Mostly wheat, but we planted oats and corn both, because the cattle and horses had to have the oats and corn.
Plant any cotton?
One year we had cotton, and we planted 3 acres. Us kids wanted the cotton to sell. We were going to make some money, you know.
You chop cotton?
Chopped it and everything. We chopped it, and we had a big crop. And Dad got out there and helped us to pick that.
Tell me about chopping cotton.
Well, you had a hoe, and you chopped out a foot between each pile of.
How many stalks would you leave in each?
About 3.
About 3.
Huh.
How much cotton could you pick in a day?
Oh, I expect 50 pounds. That'd be for me.
You ever snap cotton?
Do what?
You ever snap bowls?
Stamp it?
Yeah.
Stamp it out, you
No,
mean?
snap it.
Oh, snap it. Oh, sure, I'll pick cotton. You bet.
How much could you snap in a day?
How many what?
How much could you snap in a day instead
Oh.
of picking?
Well, I can't tell you that. I suppose we were just kids, you know, so we didn't do too much, because Dad had another fellow come in and help us to pick the cotton. There was a lot of cotton there. That ground just produced a big lot, and we had about 3 acres, I think, or so.
How many bales did you make out of 3 acres?
I can't tell you that. I know they had several bales, but I can't tell you how many.
Where was the gin located?
Where was what?
The gin? The
At
cotton
Marshall.
gin?
Marshall had a gin, yes.
Who ran the gin?
Oh, I can't remember all those names. I don't know who ran the gin. I know the Hearns had the banks, and Jones's had the grocery store and all that, but I don't know all those names. I went to high school there too.
What year did you graduate?
Oh, Lordy, let's see, what year would it be? About 1917, I suppose, 16 or 17.
Did you ever meet anyone that was a Rough Rider with Teddy Roosevelt?
Oh, yes, this fellow that they, well, he was a cousin of Roosevelt's. What's the name of that little town up there, Russell?
Mulhall, Zach Mulhall, you're
Zach
talking about.
Mulhall.
Zach Mulhall.
Yeah, he used to eat at our house a lot of times.
Did you know Colonel Zach?
Sure.
Tell me about him.
Oh, well, us kids just listened to him with their mouths open, you know, because he was a good talker too. And of course, then his daughter rode in a parade down Marshall streets, and boy, we all went to look at her going up and down those streets, astride a horse. They rode sideways then, you know.
What did people think about her riding astride?
Well, they didn't think anything of her at all. They thought she was some sort of a meanie that, you know, didn't do the right thing. But she was a show off. She rode through the streets swinging your hats and things, you know.
Lucille.
Lucille Mulhall, that was her name.
She was a
Lucille.
bulldogger too, wasn't she?
Huh?
Oh yeah,
Bulldogger.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
she drove, Lucille rode her horse
Through Marshall streets.
down Main Street in Oklahoma City in a parade and didn't get out of the saddle and rode on in the saloon and got a drink of whiskey from the bar.
That sounds like her.
That's a story they tell on her, I don't know. That's before my time.
Ever visit the Mulhall home?
Zach Mulhall?
Yeah.
Sure, he ate with us. He ate dinner with. I didn't go to his house, no, but I knew him.
What was he like?
Oh, he was a wonderful fellow, very much. He was outgoing, political. My dad was a political fellow too. Not the kind they call today politicians, but honest. Well, his nickname was Honest Jim Staten, so he had to tell the truth, keep his name up.
What kind of games did you play as a child?
Shinny. Shinny is a game you take. Do you know what shinny is?
No, ma'am.
All right, they take a empty can that had some kind of vegetable or something in it, and then poles about so long, and they dig holes, so many holes, 8 or 9, I believe it was, around. And as long as their stick was in the hole, they couldn't they couldn't hit them. But if they got out of the hole and didn't get back in, then they lost their job. They lost their whatever you call that stick that they used. We called them a stick, but I don't know what they call.
Now, how did you play the game exactly?
How do you? I don't know whether I know yet or not. There was I think there was 9 holes dug in the ground, and well, the kids made the thing, you know, and they had if their stick was out of the hole, and the other fellow put his stick in the hole, then they had to stop playing, because they had used their stick up.
How many kids played shinny?
Oh, I expect about 6 or 8.
Tell me about World War One.
World War One? Oh, I don't know what there'd be to tell. It was the most surprise to me to think that we'd go to war with somebody.
Did you do any work for the war effort?
I knitted all kinds of those things they put over their faces.
What do we call
What do you call it?
They go under the helmets.
I can't hear. I can't hear you.
A liner?
No, we talked about this the other day,
Yeah.
and you came up, somebody mentioned what it was called. I'd never heard of the expression.
Well, anyway, it's the thing they put over their faces to keep their faces warm, you know. And it was something that went clear down over their shoulders, but I knitted a lot of them. Because, boy, everybody licked into it, you know, and it only lasted 1 year. And
How many boys from around Marshall went to the war?
how many?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I could tell you. It's quite a few of them, though. I say 12 or 15. I don't know.
They all come back?
All of them came back. None of them was killed or hurt. Well, it only lasted 1 year, see, but they weren't in the firing end of it that long.
Armistice Day.
What?
Armistice Day.
What we did, we took all of our German books and everything and made a great big bonfire and burnt everything up.
Was there a big parade in Marshall?
Oh, yes. Marshall had a parade. Hennessy had a parade. There was things doing, I tell you.
Ever heard of shooting the anvils?
Doing what?
Shooting the anvils. And the blacksmith anvils?
Never heard of it.
Shooting.
Shooting.
Shoot the anvil, yes.
You've heard about it?
Oh, yeah, I've seen them do it.
Tell me about it.
Well, they just put powder down in the hole in an anvil and fired the darn thing, and it made an awful racket.
They used 2 anvils?
Huh?
They used 2 anvils?
Well, the anvil sit on top of something.
You know, I've got it on a beauty appointment, and I've got, if I get my hair wrinkled
Okay.
today, I'm going to have
You
to
have
do
your
it.
appointment right now.
That's all right. I called. And
Oh, did
she
you?
said that she'd take
Oh,
it whenever
okay.
you got there.
That was the 4th of July celebration, shooting the anvil.
1920s. Oh, you went to college, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's where you all met.
I went to
Before.
Enid, up to the school at Enid first,
Phillips,
Phillips University.
what'd you study?
Art, music, not anything of importance, but I finally had to go and get the important ones too.
Why did you go to school in Indiana?
What? My mother thought all the smart people came from Indiana. So we all had to go back. All of us were sent back to college in Indiana. Valparaiso, her father and her brothers were all college graduates from there. So they believed in it.
What year did you go to Phillips?
Oh, Lordy, let's see. I don't know what year I went to Valparaiso now. About 1916, wasn't it? I think about 16.
Where? No, you went to Valparaiso then.
Well,
16?
you said you didn't graduate from high school till 17. Is that what you said?
Well, she graduated from high school after. Hell, Marshall didn't have a high school
No,
for a while,
that
and
was the first they had at high school.
Oh,
they graduated from high
See,
school.
that was a pioneer place. It wasn't a place that's been there for years.
So Phillips
I can
was
sort of
before
answer some of
high
those
school.
questions because I remember the years too.
Yeah, he remembers years, really.
Yeah.
Well,
How long did you go to Phillips?
I just went there 1 year.
1 year.
Mhm.
Who was head of the school?
Oh, Lordy, I don't know. I can't remember their names.
You live in a dormitory?
Dorm, sure.
What was your room like? Your dorm room?
Well, it had the least things to get along with that you could imagine. There was 2 of us in the room first, and then they put the 3rd one in, so they had to put another bed in. And it was crowded.
How big was the room?
In footage, you mean? Oh, probably 12 or 14 or something
Was
like
it as
that.
big as this room?
I can't tell. I guess so, but that's a long time ago, you know.
Who was your favorite instructor at Phillips?
In Phillips, I don't know that I could tell you even one. I don't remember their names. I've forgotten a lot of this stuff, but I haven't even thought of it, you know.
After you went to Indiana, how did you two meet?
He was already there, and I came in from through Chicago, you know, to Valparaiso. And when I got there, why, I had to take a taxi out to this dorm because my 2 sisters were already there, and they had a place for me too. So when I got there, why, the taxi man brought my suitcase up and set it down on the top of the porch there where Russell was with a bunch of fellows there doing something. I don't know what they were doing, having us talk, I guess. So when he saw me get that suitcase, why, he came over and said, could he take my suitcase back to the room? And I said, oh, I'd be glad if he would. And on the way back, he says, what about going across the street and let's get a dish of ice cream? I said, oh, that'd be fine. So that's how we met. We've had a dish of ice cream across the street at Valparaiso University. It sounds crazy, but we had fun.
Mm-hmm. What'd you do for recreation in Indiana, Valparaiso?
Well, I was doing a lot of painting china, and stuff. I didn't have any recreation time. Oh, we went to ball games. We went to the ball games.
Both of you went?
Yeah, sure. Russell played on it. He was a catcher.
Baseball?
Baseball. Well, baseball was the game then. That's a long time ago,
When'd you get married?
Quite a few years after that. We've been married 7 years.
70-some years later.
Love at first sight.
Yes.
Well, he was married before, and so was I.
Okay. After you went to college in Indiana, where'd you go?
Where did I go?
Yeah.
That was the last I went to college, I think, until I came down and I went up here at Stillwater one summer. But I was going to teach in the schools of Kansas City. They called me there to come and work in the art department because I'd had all this training in art.
Did you go to Kansas City?
I went to Kansas City, yeah. Enjoyed it.
Tell me about your summer at Stillwater. What did you study there?
Well, I think it was, regular college stuff. See, I had taken all this artwork and everything, and I didn't quite get my degree in that. So I had to go back and finish up my work, and that's after I even met Russell.
What year was that?
Oh, Lordy. Year things, let's see. What year was...
How will I know?
Well, it's after I'd been to Valparaiso 1 year. I went 2 years I went to Valparaiso. 1 year then to Enid.
What year did you all meet?
What year?
18, wait a minute, not 18, 19, 16.
1916?
17, wasn't it?
16.
16, well, maybe so.
That's right, no
You
maybe
got
about it.
Numbers.
Did you have classes in Old Central?
In Old Central High School?
No, Old Central at Stillwater.
Oh, yeah, sure
No,
I did.
it's Old
Sure.
Central at Edmond you did,
Edmond.
not Stillwater.
I think she was
No, not Stillwater. Edmond's
Oh,
where I
Edmond,
went.
Edmond.
Central
yeah.
State.
Okay. When did you go to Kansas City? What year?
Well, 1918, I think it was.
I'll correct you if I may
Or
there.
1917. Huh?
Can't get all-
I can't remember all those years.
Well, I don't remember. I can tell you when it was.
It isn't too
What
important.
year?
It was 19,
1919.
I think. Well, and somebody at the door?
No, that's back
I'll keep my mouth shut because I don't know anything.
What did you teach in Kansas City? What subject?
Art.
You taught art.
I went in as an art supervisor and worked there 40 years.
40 years.
Mhm.
You say you were an art supervisor?
Art supervisor, yes.
Were you in one school or were you over several
Oh.
schools?
Several schools. I had 18 schools at one time.
18.
That's quite a few.
What were your duties as art supervisor?
Oh, well, I had to go to these different schools and where they had the lessons and everything all set up, and I had to have a plan for what I was teaching to that group at that time, and then I had to study, of course, to have it for the next time. And I didn't always have that many groups, but sometimes I did too. Then I taught the deaf 1 year in the art. They thought that that would be good for them, and it was. It worked.
Tell me about the flappers in Kansas City.
The what?
The flappers.
Flappers?
1920s.
I don't know about the flappers. Guess I've lost them.
Did you bob your hair in the 20s?
Well, I bobbed my hair, but I can't tell you whether it was the 20s or not. Sure I did.
When did you have your first car?
Where'd I have what?
Your first car. First automobile.
When? When I went to Kansas City, I had to have a car, and not when I first went, because I went by bus, different ways to get to the schools, you know. But we had to go by whatever the facilities were, at that time.
The Depression of the 1930s. How'd that affect you?
Just like all others, I tell you. We're getting into one right now.
What was your salary in the 30s?
Oh my gosh. Well, the first year I was in Kansas City, I got $100 a month. And that was considered a big salary when I went there. Doesn't sound like much now, but it bought everything I needed.
In the 30s, what was your salary?
Oh, I can't remember all that. It went up as all the rest of them. Now, you could decide as well as I could. I can't tell.
What were you doing on December 7th, 1941? Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor.
Well, I don't know what I was doing. I know that we were all shocked to think that they would attack our base there.
Did you do any work for the war effort in the Second World War?
For the war effort, you
Yeah.
say? Oh, I expect I did, but I don't know. Everybody pitched in and did everything they could to help out, you know. And that's when I did all that knitting.
When'd you come back to Oklahoma?
When? I didn't ever come back to live here. Is that what you mean? No, I lived in Kansas City from then on.
What year did you all get married?
Oh, 7 years ago. But I was married before that, and he was too.
How did you all get back together?
Well,
Oh, I just picked up the telephone and called her. No, her sister
my sister lived here,
lived here. She
and her
come
son
down here.
lived here, and I had relatives, you know, live here.
Is that why you came back?
Well, I came back just to visit. I didn't come back to live here at all.
So what happened?
What happened?
You're living here now, aren't you?
I married him, and he lived here, so I came right here. I was alone, been a widow for 10 years, and, well, thought just, well, have some life together. But we had been friends all through the years anyway. Well, that's all the time I can take, because they won't fix my hair, I know about it.
Okay.
The early day buffalo hunts and so forth are really not true. Couldn't be. They wasn't hunting those buffalo to get the meat to feed the railroad builders and so forth. They was killing them to get rid of them.
Pull up table here.
They were crossbreeding their cattle, and
Gin run the table.
they come up with a maverick beef critter. And the cow died giving birth a lot of times.
How well did you know Billy Fox?
I didn't know him.
You didn't know him?
No, but I knew about him. He lived until about 1935 or 6.
Okay. Wells County, Indiana.
That's right.
What was the name of the town?
Ossian, Ossin.
Aussie. How
Yeah.
big was it?
Well, back in those days, if you counted them all, you had about
Yeah, that's it.
600 or 700. You'd have
Now,
3,000 or 4,000 or 5 now.
Katie
Mhm.
says, don't bother me.
I've got the history of Wells County that was given in there. A lot of the stories they tell are true, some of them are not.
Sue,
You know,
front
those
door. Front door.
histories written of these counties
Going out the front door.
are made up by people that were not living at that time, and they told and retold stories, and they change. There's a certain amount of truth in them, and there's a certain amount of fiction. It's kind of hard to tell it apart unless you know the difference.
You lived in Indiana for 17 years.
Yeah.
And then, is that when you went to school? And then,
Well, I did go to school up there at that time. Yes, I met her there.
right. What did you study at college?
Oh, nothing in particular. Kind of a general educational course. I didn't have any desire to teach. Pretty much, I guess, made it my mind I wasn't going to, and didn't.
Okay. Tell me, as a boy in Indiana, what chores did you do?
Oh, I usually took care of keeping the wood handy for the stove, bringing the coal in, and certain amount of feeding the livestock, and that's about it.
Okay. Did you live on a farm?
Oh, yes.
Okay. What kind of livestock did you have?
Oh, I had cattle there and hogs. I had more hogs than cattle. And the horses. And that's where the furnace, the power was horsepower. The horsepower furnished by horses. Very little power machinery.
Did your father butcher his own hogs?
Oh, yes.
Did you help him?
Yeah.
What time of year did you butcher?
Well, the first go around was usually in November, but usually in late December or January, is when they made the real deal. They killed a whole bunch of them.
How many would you butcher at one time?
Well, late December or early January, they usually butcher around 8 or 10. Cure the meat, you know, the smokehouse.
Tell me about curing the meat. How'd you do that?
Well, they hung it up in the smokehouse, and there's cracks around the edges, you know, to let the smoke out. They build a fire in an open kettle in there, and they usually built the fire to smoke the meat out of white oak.
White oak?
White oak was the best. And the smoke would penetrate the hams and the bacon and so forth. And after it was smoked, they'd wrap it in a paper, a whole lot like they put up flour in those days. They used flour bags and put the meat in there, and it would keep pretty well up till the middle of the summer.
How long would 8 hogs last, the meat?
Well, we'd butcher the hogs pretty close to the first of the year, along December or January, and the smoked and cured meat would last, pretty well all through the summer.
How many people in your family?
Well, there was 6 of us.
So 8 hogs would last 6 of you through the summer.
Well, if they're all home, yes, which they're not.
Did you butcher your own cattle?
Not very much. As a rule, they wouldn't kill over one beef in a year. We were not great beef people. We were more inclined to go on the hog route.
Can you tell me the difference between curing pork and curing beef?
Well, you don't really cure beef. You cure the pork and you hope the devil of the beef will last until you use it up. And as a rule, if they kill the beef, they'd spread it out among enough people that 30 to 60 days is about the end of it. The people that had sold it commercially would have large coolers that they would carry it in and walk it in, you know. But they didn't very often kill beef for over 30 days ahead of time.
After your college days in Indiana, did you go back to the farm?
Oh yes, my college days didn't amount to very much.
Okay, you lived in Indiana 17 years.
Yeah,
Then where'd you go?
came to Oklahoma.
Why?
Well, you just saw her leave here, didn't you? Don't ask any further questions.
Okay.
And it's the usual way, you know. You start out, there's not very many fellas that marries the first girl I went with, you know. She married her and lived her life and did her thing, and I married and went my way. And I worked out here. I had to work in order to, I had a bad habit. I like to eat. In order to eat, I pretty much had to work.
Where'd you settle in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
That was about 1915?
Well, I came out here in the fall of, in the summer of 1917.
What kind of job did you have here?
Well, I went to work. The first place, I think I worked about 2 or 3 days. They didn't have any much industry here. The biggest one was probably the meat industry, the packing industry. I worked for about 2 or 3 days at Wilson Company's plant. I didn't like it. And I come back into town and stopped, got off of the streetcar and went into the Curtis plant.
What's the Curtis plant?
Well, did you ever hear of the Curtis Company of Clinton, Iowa? I guess not. They were big manufacturers of windows and doors.
Okay.
And they had wholesale houses some places. One was at Lincoln, Nebraska, and Rock Island, Illinois. But they manufactured carloads of doors and carloads of windows at Clinton, Iowa. At Clinton, Iowa was located in those days the largest sawmill in the United States. But there's no timber there. They floated the timber down the Mississippi River on barges and unloaded it, and the white pine was made into doors and windows. And in later years, the railroads crossed the country from the west coast. And they stopped over at, Clinton, Iowa, and Muscatine, Iowa, and various places, Dubuque, Iowa. They had milling and transit privileges. The railroads would charge the through rate on a carload of doors, for instance, Oklahoma City, and the lumber be stopped up on the line there and milled. And they had a small fee that they put on the finished product for shipping it on. And you ask people where they were getting the doors and where they were getting their windows. Well, the truth of it is they didn't know. Hell, they were manufactured in transit. Don't you see?
Yep.
Then the ways that we do things have somewhat changed.
What did you do for the Curtis plant?
Oh, I started in by carrying messages and answering the telephone, and they had wartime changes. The fella in charge of keeping the stock records left, and I took the stock records over, and later years I became the chief order clerk just a kid.
World War I, what did you do?
Well, I was working at the Curtis plant, and before it was over with, I was in the Army.
What'd you do in the Army?
Well, I was studying to be an officer, and as it happened, they didn't need that many officers, and the war got over, and the armistice was signed, and I went back to work.
Where were you studying to be an officer?
Where?
Where?
Oh, the great city of Edmond up here. They had a company of soldiers or two in nearly every one of these colleges and universities, you know. And you was kind of given a background for it. The basic training was all the same wherever you were. But the young fellows starting out in World War II, they taught them a little bit in foreign language. Well, that was French. Everybody, whether it was like I was, a farm boy that didn't know any French, hell, they never had any in school. And I got some when I was in college. Enough to hopefully get by. Well, when the armistice was signed and they decided they didn't need it, they completed the school course and discharged them as fast as they could.
What did your military training consist of at Edmond?
Oh, hell, just basic training such as physical fitness, you know, learning to walk and take orders, and that's about all.
Were you going to be an infantry officer, artillery, or what branch?
The chances are it would have been infantry.
What'd you do in the army?
But you know, you understand, in World War I, we were in a little different shape than we were in World War II. In World War I, the soldiers we had really no particular basis for military training at all. They had to learn how to talk and every other damn thing, and they had to learn the basic IDR, infantry drill regulation, and then they had to learn enough of the foreign languages that they could get along where they were likely going to be shipped, and most likely it was French, so you had to learn a little French. I didn't learn very much. I didn't like it very well. But it does help you. You'd be surprised, Howard, with no more French that I had in World War I, how much that helped me when I went to France years later as a tourist. You know where it would help you? You could pick up the newspaper, you could read the headlines and so forth, and you could kind of halfway tell what's going on in the country. If you hadn't had any French, you wouldn't know. And I remember some fellows that hadn't been around in World War I, and I could do little things to help them. I remember Earl de Ville's some damn place in southern France. He tried to make a little conversation with the fellow in the drugstore, buying some medicine and so forth, and the fellow waited on him, and he got through. He said a few words to him in French, and he turned to me and said, "What did he say?" He said, "Well, on the basis of what he said was, I've taken care of you, I've got what you want, get the hell out of here." I said, "Now, he didn't exactly say that, but that's what it meant." You know how that'd be.
Oh, yeah.
If you learn just a few words in a language, the basic words, they may not help you any, but there'll be somebody to make a remark. You'll understand what he means.
What did you do on Armistice Day, November 11th?
Well, I went to sleep.
Went to sleep. Didn't celebrate?
No, they wasn't. We wasn't out on drill then, and I could go to bed. I heard the damn whistles blowing and the people hollering. I knew what it was. I just went to sleep.
Then you went back to work for the Curtis Company.
Yeah, I went after the war was over and I got out of the service. I went back to work for them.
If I may ask, where'd you meet your first wife?
My first wife I met in Oklahoma City.
What was her name?
Williamson, Roxy Williamson. She's a wonderful girl. She's a school teacher. She come up here had lived in Durant, was in the school system down there. There were people sold farms they had down in Bryan County and moved to Oklahoma City, and she come up here and got into the Oklahoma City school system. And a friend of the teacher that taught school here lived in her house, and in the usual process of dating the girl you don't know, I met her. That's all of us that.
What year were you married?
1924.
1924. The 1920s in Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
They're called the Roaring Twenties. Why?
no reason.
No reason?
In the 1920s, they evolved kind of from a system, an agricultural system, when people more or less did nothing. So they all started, more of them started to work in the 1920s. The contractors started some building up here then, and the farm people started some farm work, and people started a little movement in general economics, and they referred to it, they have later, as the Roaring Twenties. There wasn't anything roaring but the wind. It just blew by about the same as usual. I didn't see any, I couldn't tell any roar. Hell, I had to work in order to eat, and I always did that.
What did you think about the flappers?
Oh, it is this conversation piece, much to do about nothing.
Did many of the girls here in Oklahoma City bob their hair and wear the short dresses in the 20s?
In the early 20s, they kind of started to do it.
What started that?
Oh, hell, I don't know. I didn't have long hair. I wouldn't know. It's just, it was a little bit easier to take care of short hair than it was long hair. All that damn long hair that hang clear down to the waist, and take quite a while to dress and do it up. And I know if I'd have been a girl, I'd have bought my hair just for convenience.
Did you ever meet any veterans of the Mexican border incident? There with Pershing chasing Pancho Villa.
Oh, I don't know as I met him. I knew him. Hell, I saw it happen.
You did.
I was here when they sent the troops down to the border to kind of protect human life. That's all it was for.
What do you remember about the troops going down?
Huh?
What do you remember about those times when the troops were going down?
Well, I just saw them drilling in general infantry drill on the streets, and they'd load them on a train and ship them down to the border. That's about all there was to that. There wasn't anything unusual about it. The general impression was that they tried to leave the impression with the people that Poncheville was sort of a damn heel. But as it turned out, it really wasn't.
Did Pershing come to Oklahoma City?
Yes, after the war. He came, I think the official war was over in 1918, and Pershing came here, I believe, in 1919.
Did you meet him?
Oh, no. Hell no, I saw him parade on the streets. His call here was,
Why did he come here, Pershing?
well, there was a general feeling here, maybe that the people were not supporting the military and all the way, you know. And I think he just came here to build up goodwill. I never could see any other reason for it. The national administration here was a Democrat administration, and the president himself was anything but well. And there was some dissension in this country as to whether the people were supporting the president like they should. And I think Pershing came more or less kind of as a build-up to support the president. Well, whatever it was supposed to be, it didn't work. As your records, it tells you what's happened in 1920. We had an election here, and they changed the national administration. Woodrow Wilson tried to run the country for several years, physically incapacitated. He wasn't able to do it. And he delegated a lot of authority to his wife, who was a fine woman but not capable. And I don't know whether you feel like I do or not, but this country functions well under an elected president who does the job himself. And anytime, as far as I'm concerned, anytime Reagan quits doing the job himself and sits down and folds his hands and backs away, hell, they'll take the ball and run. That's what they're trying to do now. It's as natural as hair in a biscuit. The fellows out want in. Any way they can get in, they want in. And personally, I'm glad to see him stand his ground and fight it out.
1929 had the stock market crash.
Yeah?
How did the Depression affect you and your family?
Well, we had less money to live on, and we had to make it do. We had no damn way of getting any more. And the effects of it was that I finally started a business of my own,
What business?
lumber business. retail lumber business. And
What year did you start it?
Oh, 19. Well, 1934 is when it started. But I'd had a touch of this sash and door business before then, you know.
What made you decide to start a lumber business?
In order to make a living. As it was, I wasn't doing any good.
How'd you start it? What'd you do?
Well, I bought out a fellow that had a lumber yard that he didn't want to run, and he wanted to sell.
What was the name of it?
LP Freeman Lumber Company. He didn't have to sell it, he just did. In order to conduct a retail business, you had to sell people and extend credit on an open account. He wouldn't do it. He didn't give a damn if they had $10 million, he wouldn't give them credit for 10 cents. And that's the way he run his business. He had a right to. I have no objection to it. He made it easy for us to get started. And we bought him out. He didn't have much of a lumber yard, didn't have much stock. I went in with a fellow that I had talked about going in business with before and didn't do it because conditions didn't, I think, warrant it. But he was out of town. He wanted to sell the place, I knew it. And I met him on a holiday. We were closed where I worked here in town and run a lumber yard. It was on New Year's Day. I met him on New Year's Day, invoiced his merchandise, he didn't have much. Went to his house that night, figured it up at what the market price would be. And Monday morning I met him downtown with my former fellow that was going in business with and paid him off. And he didn't own the land even, he had a contractor purchase it from the state. And took an assignment of his contract and paid him for the inventory. And in less than an hour's time, I was in business. Well, news travels fast. I didn't have a chance to even go out to the people that I worked for and resign. They already got the information first. So I met them and told them about it. No problems. No hard stuff of any kind. But I still had the bad habit of like to eat. And in order to eat, I had to make some money. And I could come near making money for myself than I could working for somebody else. That's about all. You know a better reason?
No. Where was the Freeman Lumber Company?
44th and Western, 4412 Northwestern. He didn't have enough land to have a street number all the way, but it was on the corner of 44th and Western.
How long?
And it's there today.
Okay, where did you get your lumber from?
Well, it came in from, I got most of it from southeast Oklahoma and some from Arkansas.
From Dirks?
Oh no, occasionally bought some from Dirks, but most of the mills down there are shipped by truck. And also we occasionally bought a car from somebody else. You bought your lumber on the open market, and that was the market, that was the territory that supplied Oklahoma City. They didn't come from the West Coast in those days, very little.
Well, who's in southeast Oklahoma besides Dirks?
Oh, nearly everybody. There was a lumber company, a pretty good one at Antlers, Oklahoma. There was a pretty good sized mill down in Hugo.
What was the name of it?
I don't know, Wilson Bennett was at Antlers, and I don't know even who it was, these other places. They were small.
Back in '34 when you first started, what was the price of lumber per board foot? White pine.
Well, of course, white pine was just one of the species.
What was the average price of the board foot?
There was no such thing as an average.
There wasn't.
No. You know, that's just like a man walks down the road and a horse is walking down the road and the fellow's driving a car down the road. You figure up what the average speed is, and they're averaging 20 miles an hour in those days. But when you analyze it, there isn't a damn thing going 20 miles an hour but the average.
Sure. What type of wood did you handle the most?
Oh, at the time I started in business, we probably handled more yellow pine than anything else, but very shortly we switched to fir.
Okay, what was the price of those then in '34?
Oh, there's no such thing as an average. You might say, I wouldn't want to attempt to say. But I switched over to fir right shortly because that was the wood that had the most of, and there's going to be the most of it on the market, and it had the best representation here. The fellow who was general sales manager for Weyerhaeuser, they're the big people in the fur business. There's a lot of others in it, a lot of other big ones in it. But his brother lived here in Oklahoma City. His brother was in the wholesale and commission business, and everybody figured that this brother is the one that carried the real stroke. Hell, he didn't at all. The fellow that carried the real stroke, I thought, was another man entirely. And I worked with him, and he set up the credit arrangement where I could buy Weyerhaeuser stuff. Buy it in big quantities, and he arranged a credit end of it where I didn't have to pay for it immediately when it hit town. And it worked out fine. And I stayed with his arrangement for a long time. Worked successfully, and I made him, I think, a good customer because they seemed to like it. And then finally came World War II later, quite some years later. And I still worked with him, and he went into the service and he come out and became a salaried representative for Weyerhaeuser.
What was his name?
Earl Wagner. I think he was at that time the finest commission wholesaler there was here. And I went with him, and when he was a salaried representative for Weyerhaeuser for a long time, as long as he lived.
And what were his duties as a representative?
Hell, to sell merchandise. And he knew how.
Now, did he have samples he brought around, or?
Oh, no, hell no. He didn't have anything but his piece of paper. He knew what it meant, and so did I.
So you knew what he was selling then?
He knew what he was selling. He's one of the best. And he went into they drafted him into the service in World War II. Shipped him to England. He come back here and still represented him, and then he didn't die. I got I think I still have it, a copy of the last order he wrote up for me. carload of western pine plywood. Hard to buy. You had to know what he's doing, how he's doing. He knew how. I opened up the mail one morning, and here was the order confirmed by the Weyerhaeuser office in St. Paul, and a damn telephone call came through that he had died that morning. Did you know him? Well, I think he's one of the best this town ever had.
What did you do during World War II?
Practically nothing.
Just run the lumber business.
Just run a lumber yard.
You might mention the activity down in Fort Sill.
Huh?
What you did down in Fort Sill.
Well, at World War II, oh yes, I was busy as hell then.
What'd you do?
We put a lumber yard in at Fort Sill, and sold lumber to build a lot of houses and residential apartments at Lawton. And incidentally, I got my lumber through Weyerhaeuser, most of it. And a lumber yard was located down there, right along Fort Sill Boulevard, where you drive into Lawton. I didn't sell much stuff down there to the fort at all, but I sold around the lumber and what have you on about 200 and some houses down there, plus a bunch of apartments. And some of them were sold to Oklahoma City builders, of course. One right next door here, a fellow lives owns a house next door, built down at Lawton. And one of the fellows that built down there, the biggest builder that built down there, became a pretty big builder in Oklahoma City and areas around here. Steve Pennington. You may have heard of him, I don't know. I sold them down there, so I wasn't exactly the same as unemployed. I worked.
Now, were these buildings on Fort Sill or in Lawton?
In Lawton. Nothing on the, we built nothing on the military base at all. I didn't even go out on the military base. I knew it was there, but no, I had no business out there. No reason to go.
How many lumber yards do you have now?
Don't have any.
Don't have any.
Well, I have one thing that could be called a lumber yard, Caston Door and Plywood Company, which is a millwork plant and a sizable operation. I'll say this, and not say it braggingly, it's the only complete mill in the state of Oklahoma today.
Where's it located?
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Is that 44th and Western?
No. 6701 North Hudson. And there's one plant in Texas, one firm in Texas has a plant that's larger than ours. They're at San Angelo.
Now, what do you do there in North Hudson? What does the plant do?
Oh, they make windows and make doors and make cabinets and frames. Millwork on office buildings, and churches and schoolhouses and what have you.
Do you still have the lumber yard at 24th and Western?
No, don't have any lumber yard.
No lumber yard.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So the only thing you have is on North Hudson.
North Hudson. You understand, we can sell lumber up there, you know. We're not prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
We not only can sell it, the hell we do.
It still has a Caston name.
Yeah. You have any questions?
Well, you might just tell him how many lumber yards you were involved in at one time.
Oh, at one time I had 6 lumber yards.
All in Oklahoma City?
No. I had, you might say, all this, really just one in Oklahoma City and one in Yukon and one in El Reno and one in Fort Sill. I had one for a short time in Wanette. I've sold all of them.
Was it Caston Lumber and Wanette?
No, this is in Oklahoma City. I sold that too. I sold the real estate, and they opened up a lumber yard there, whatever that means. I had my finger in things connected with the building business for a long time here. I know a lot of the builders.
Who were some of the big builders that you knew?
Oh, it'd be hard to say.
Met Mr. Nichols.
I knew of the firm, Charles M. Dunning was one of the larger builders here, and they're still a pretty good size. Mac Dunning, the grandson, runs it. And there was a fellow here years ago. There was a pretty big builder by the name of Kripke, K-R-E-I-P-K-A-C, Andrew C. Kripke. He's been out of it for a long time, and at one time the firm, the old Hombo Construction Company, was pretty big here. They originated from in Denmark. That's where they came from. And as the building business goes, there a lot of them get big and then they sell out, and they get small and then you don't hear of them, you know.
Did you know Mr. Nichols?
Oh yes, I knew him. I
Oh,
didn't
is
know
he?
him well, but he never was a big contractor. He was a big builder. He he stuck with the residential property. He was never commercial.
How come he put Nichols Hills here?
Well, I think he's probably a pretty good idea. The land was here. You had to start somewhere, you know. He started with about 700 acres of pretty good land.
I heard he had a chance to go on over east where the hills were.
Oh, he had a lot of chances to go a lot of places he didn't go. He speculated over east a little bit, but not very much. He did his big thing right here.
You might tell him about your building partners, Earl, and the deals that you made where you went out and subdivided.
War, you mean?
Well, I'm thinking of Earl and Wilson. You know,
Well, I was in business with both Earl DeVildas and Bob Wilson. We built houses, but they're a different type, and they wouldn't hitch up together very good. So both of them went their separate ways, and they made success of it. Earl made success as a builder. The fellow that I was associated with was probably the largest builder in Oklahoma City. But the builders, nearly all of them, have some other field that they operate in, and the building, more or less, it may start out as a sideline or a main issue and then revert itself. In War's case, the building was a side issue. His main goal was in real estate, and he had a very successful real estate business. We started to go into the lumber business one time and then didn't do it because it wasn't the thing to do right at the time. And when we went back in business, why, he used the lumber business as a build-up for his building business. That's the size of it. And as long as we handled it that way, it worked just fine. And it never was any dissension at all, but it got to where that I was going to have to split the company up, and so was he, in order to keep it personnel. My son wasn't going to work in the organization very much longer, and I don't blame him. It gets mixed off into other things. His son was running it off into the evangelism and the preaching business, and that doesn't mix with business very good. And my boy wanted to go into the building and promotion business, and so the best thing I could do was to negotiate a deal and to separate the whole damn thing. And that's what I did. And it's worked pretty well. It hasn't nothing. There's no sure cure for everything, but I think I have the general goodwill of the people in our company. Howard can dispute if he wants to. I think I have the goodwill of the people with the casting door and plywood.
Point.
And I don't really head the company anymore. Russell Jr. just does. He's the president of it. I'm just the old man that sits here with the walker. But I think he's doing pretty good. And Howard's son is one of my wheels over there. He's got himself sick, though, and he's going to have to get well. What's yours?
He's back on the job today.
He's back on the job, but is that damn thing liable to recur that he has?
Oh, I think it won't if he takes care of his diet.
Uh-huh.
Gastritis.
Well, his son is moving into the management end pretty well of the door and plywood company. And I've had what you call it a stroke. I guess they call it a massive stroke, don't they? What the hell did they call this, what I've had? Would you say that?
Stroke? I wouldn't say massive stroke.
Well, in other words, I understand, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that they didn't even tell the family for sure that the likelihood of me ever walking again was any good, did they? But I think maybe I have a fair chance to walk again. I don't know.
Doing pretty good. I'll tell you something Joe might be interested in. Tell him about your exploits up in Spring Creek, how that got started.
Oh,
Where it is. And
Spring Creek is exploits is a pretty good name for it. I have a bad habit developed early in life. I like to fish. And I learned to do a little trout fishing. I'm not good, but I was considered fair at one time. And an area up there we call Spring Creek. Well, it's just a series of rivers. North from Gunnison, Colorado, you go 10 miles north of there, and you're following the Gunnison River all the way. And when you get up there, there's two more rivers come in and fork and make the river. And then you follow the one river for 7 or 8 miles, and you come to a creek known as Spring Creek. Well, a fellow that I knew sold as a customer here, and also worked for War as general superintendent down at Lawton when he was building. Bought some land up there, built a resort. Well, the resort got pretty good size, and he put on a subdivision, and he didn't bother with fooling with the surveyor up there to start with.
Tell him how much he paid for the land, that's kind of.
Oh, he paid $6,000 for the land. The land was 160 acres. And he turned around and sold 12 building sites off right away for $6,000 and got his money back. And he marked off where they should be. One of the things that I drew the contracts up on the first part of them on an old battered up typewriter he had there on a dining room table. And I questioned the descriptions a little bit. And I asked him the question how he arrived at some of those descriptions, and he told me. And another thing he told me was that he did that just like he had done where he was building down at Lawton. It was all surveyed by a licensed bond surveyor. And if he couldn't find the pins, hell, he usually just got out and stepped it off. And he usually would find the pins in and build. He did this the same way. He stepped it off out in the mountains. Well, I asked him just a question. If he had a steel tape measure there someplace, made him mad. Yeah, he had ones out there in the tool house to go get it for one. I went out and got it. And then I went up to the place where he started. The fence was a fence built in there. And I measured me off of 6, 8, and 10, you understand. And did some measuring out there, and I used this tape. I come out down the property there and stepping it off and using the tape. The steel tape is a little better than stepping it off. Not without a surveyor, not very much, but it come out down there, and I didn't get anyways near the same answer. And saw the fellows that he'd sold the land to, and got the descriptions changed on some of it reluctantly. And he set some pins up. I had it checked by a surveyor later, and the only steel pin there was on the whole damn property was on the property sold to me. Well, this surveyor, that's all he had to really go by, that and some other another survey, and he resurveyed it and told me that what I thought, that they had sold me property that they didn't intend to. And they had a picnic ground down there that most of it I owned. Well, I didn't argue about it. I just had the pin set, suggested they might ought to correct it, and the fellow that, in the meantime, the fellow that built Spring Creek had sold it to a member of his family, and they argued around quite a bit and got mad about it, and I didn't say anything. They built a golf course out there, and the fellow come out and surveyed the damn thing, who was a licensed and bonded surveyor. He was a surveyor, headed the association for the state of Colorado. He was city surveyor of Gunnison, and he proceeded to tell me that I set my pins where they were. Well, Walt got mad about that, you know. And he went up there and kicked him out after a while. I didn't say anything. But I told Jack a couple of years or so later that I was going to run my line down there through his property that he claimed was his, and he didn't want me to do it. And I said, well, all right, I'll put it off for a while. And you know, the state has a rule. They won't stalk a stream any closer than a half mile to posted water. And hell, my posted water was, I didn't have it posted, but I owned the property right across there. And so they wouldn't put the fish in on the bridge up the stream anymore. And they put them in on the picnic ground down there. I didn't say anything. I didn't care if they dropped the damn creek full of fish. And you know, when Julie was out there, your daughter, she telephoned her mother they was bringing fish down there for her to cook, and then she didn't have anything big enough to cook them in. Great goddamn big fish there, 1.5 feet long, you know. And so I don't know what they're finally going to do, but at any rate, right across the creek from me is a resort, and the land that they cross over there, which I don't object to, they drive right down on my property with the fish truck and dump the fish in. They're doing it right, do it every year. I'm going to try to figure out some damn way to get some of that land put up down there for sale and buy it, Howard. I wouldn't be surprised what we'll have to pay. Oh, $50,000–$75,000 or so to get the ground down below there. Maybe more than that, if we can buy it at all. Because I can stop the traffic down there, you know. I've already got that done. You know where the sign on the fence says trails end? That means exactly what it says. And I'd like to fence off some more land down below there, and eventually maybe sell another building site or two, which will bring good money, because that's the end of the trail.
How much those lots are selling for now there?
Well, for one good building site down there, with the water rights and everything into it, they can get $50,000. They can go down below there and sell off an acre and a half of ground right below, and leave more ground than what we have for our place in the fence too. They can sell a building site in there for $50,000–$75,000. I'll bet they can. You know, Christopher sold his. He sold it to a doctor down in Houston. And as you're in the insurance business and so forth, you know that the doctors have ways of making all the damn money there is coined. Or do you? You don't say no. And that's who can buy it. That's who I'm going to sell that to down there. They'll go in there and build a damn place that'll sell for a couple $100,000 or so. And they don't object to paying $50,000 for the land if that's the end of the development. Now that's probably wishful thinking, but how else do you do those things? Hmm? Well, thank you for listening to me.
Yes, sir.
I assure you that I know nothing.
Quite a bit. Anything else?
What are you writing?
Unless there's something that you want to build on, or
No, I think we pretty well covered it.
Are you writing a history of some kind?
You might say it's a history. Like
Howard, you
it's-